my screen. Obviously, you're seeing my screen. So, does everybody, can you see this?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So like I said, tonight, March 15th video call, we're going to focus on camp updates. We're going to kind of review a little bit of what we talked about last week with fear, anxiety, stress, some of those things, and confidence piece. And then we're going to jump right into mega week plans and kind of see you guys' thoughts on that, and we'll go from there. Obviously, a big pathway for coaches that we're really pushing and stressing and encouraging, and this is going to be a part of the mega week as well, is wrestling 201, 202, 203. We'd like to see if we can get 500 people to hit 201 eventually, the foundation coach. And then we'll work up to the talent development coach. High performance coach. I just filmed about 10 calls for the national 202 talent development coach this week. So quick review on just a recovery piece. Proper nutrition, right? That's the foundation of recovery. Hydration is also critical for optimal performance. So make sure that we're getting fluids coming in, even though, especially with weight management, hydration is a big key to that. Number 2 is quality sleep. Got to make sure that the body's natural recovery system, if you're getting in plenty of sleep, 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep, definitely that helps with muscle repair, the hormonal balance, and just mental clarity, right? 3, active recovery. As we're going through this periodization phase, we are getting ready to hit into that active recovery after this qualifier, so that way we can get ready for the Olympic Games. But right now we are not in this active recovery phase, but we do have a piece of this recovery phase after each session, right? And so that's the low intensity exercises. That's the stretching and the agility to get that blood flow and the muscle recovery and the soreness, get that lactic acid spread throughout the body. That leads us right into 4, which is that massage and foam rolling. Definitely, when we get into targeting specific muscle groups and releasing that tension there, so that way we can improve our flexibility. That comes through the massage and the foam rolling. Obviously, mindfulness and meditation. It's not just physical, but mental as well on the recovery side. The more stress that we can reduce, that enhances our focus, which definitely makes it a clearer train of thought. And then that leads into the breathing and the neuro training as well, just to continue to achieve that high performance. We talked about this last week, and I want to hit on it again because I had several, or not last week, but a couple weeks ago, last call, several people reached out to me, and I've been engaging with them, and they really kind of got stuck on a couple of these things. And so what is fear, right? That's the intangible product of our thoughts, the psychological or physiological response that we have to danger, right? And so then we talked about fear and how it can be cognitive or not. It can be physical or mental. What is anxiety? And that's the emotional state characterized by nervousness, worry, apprehension, right? It's associated with activation of the body. And this kind of goes into, when we talk about anxiety, the cognitive and the somatic, right? The cognitive, obviously, the worries, the negative thoughts, the doubts, that all of those creep in. That's the mental side, right? Which could lead right into the middle of fear. And then we also got the somatic, where perceive that you can't do something, right? All of a sudden now you're too slow, or because of this, because of worry, stress, anxiety, those things, those negative thoughts creep in. Then all of a sudden we don't flow as good. We don't have as much range of motion because we limit ourselves through the power of the mind. How do we conquer that fear? And these are some different ways. I'm going to start from the bottom and come up. Obviously, confidence can also help us overcome fears, right? The more confidence we have, it helps us overcome those fears. Part of going back to moments when you feel the most confident. So when you're winning that match, you're getting ready to tech fall your opponent, you're getting ready to hit that last lace or that last gut wrench or get that last takedown to win. You've been dominating the whole match. That's when you feel the most confident. And you're definitely not having that fearful thought of getting thrown for 5, right? And thought awareness and breathing, that obviously can help us calm the nervous system and from feeling anxious. It can slow the heart rate down, right? So going back to that first piece where we talked about confidence can also help us overcome the fears. What is confidence? Well, confidence is the feeling or belief that one can rely on someone or something. There's that firm trust, right? Like you see this with children with their parents. They have that confidence that they're protected, right? So there, and it is not a feeling, but it's an action, right? Confidence, it can be a feeling, but it is an action first. And we went over those last time. Kind of went into more detail with that. So if you're interested in that, you got more questions, hop on that last call and the video link there on Wrestling Australia's website in the coaches section, the high performance section. Go down. You can click on that and feel free to reach out to me if you got more questions or you want to get into deeper conversation with those. How do you get from fear to confidence? There's three things, right? We can be underconfident, we can be confident, or we can be overconfident. To the left-hand side here, you see the fear, doubt, worry, hesitation, kind of that intimidation. Then definitely you're in that underconfident zone. When you are confident, you're courageous, right? You've got trust. You believe. You see that's the center point. It's the belief, right? Yeah, you believe that you're prepared mentally and physically. You know that. You don't have to think about it. You're confident in it. When you're overconfident, sometimes you get complacent, right? You get a little careless. Maybe you don't prepare as well because you're a little overconfident. You've already beat that opponent 3 times. You know that you're a better coach than the other coach, you know, and so then you get a little fearless at times, which there's good and bad to that as well. But being overconfident, generally you turn into a little more unprepared, a little bit more careless, and a little bit more complacent. But just general confidence comes from your preparation, your strengths, your past successes, and praise. You've got to have others, give you those accolades and recognize that. Recognize where your strengths are, where your past successes are, and recognize all your preparation going into the Olympic qualifier. Okay. Three things I encourage, obviously, is to focus on the process and the opportunity. We're getting ready to have the opportunity to qualify spots for Australia in the Olympic Games in Paris for 2024. How exciting is that? And the process that we've been working on to get there, not just mentally, but physically as well. We're looking at the camps and the camp preparation. This is a great opportunity. We've had a great opportunity to even get some of our athletes out of the country and get their hands on other humans, right? And different styles and different ways of wrestling. So it's super exciting. Need to focus on the details that we need to be prepared so that way we don't have anxiety and stress, right? We got to focus on all the details. I'm going to get into that in a little bit. And as the more you prepare, obviously, the more that you're going to hopefully lean on your strengths and you're going to reaffirm that those are strengths and you're going to build off of those. I encourage the athletes, know that you've already won the national team trials. You are the national team person in that weight category and that you are successful. You've already been there. Your coaches have seen this work. They've seen your work at the camps leading up into the qualifier. And so now you just keep continuing to put those drops in that goal bucket, right? Again, we lose respect and a lot of things. You gain it in drips, but you lose them in buckets, right? How do you be a champion? This is something that we generally covered last week or last call as well. And the answer is pretty simple. Well, in order to be a champion, you got to act like a champion, right? Do all the things that the champion does. They prepare, they plan, they periodize, the correct way. They eat right. They have goals that are appropriate and they're set. They eliminate all the distractions. That was a piece of us getting away and separating some of these camps to eliminate some of the distractions and to generally get that focus and get that preparation and that plan dialed in. And then at the same time, you got to learn relaxation techniques and you got to use those confidence boosting strategies so that way we can get in sync and be that true champion. Now we're going to kind of switch gears. This is part of our preparation, and this is what the camp, Connor and I have been working on this. I believe Andre's been in the middle of this as well with us. But these are the athletes and coaches feedback. So there's a Google Drive folder. Should have access to these. All of the national team and those have access to these. But the athletes and coaches feedback, it's got statistics in it, also the potential opponents. And then it's got all the films inside of it. I'm going to kind of go over those a little bit. But on the athlete side, we just ask one of the Google Docs that's inside this Google folder is to provide details on anything that they would like from the coaches. We discuss this with the goal cards and we discuss this with the cueing and the language of coaching. And is there any coaching cues that you like? Is there something that you want a coach to say from the corner that helps you reset and refocus and instantly gets you to change? If you, for an example, coach says levels from the corner, and that indicates that you need to lower your stance, get your butt to your heels, and get that level change there. Are there any pre-match conditions that you would help perform the coaches that we could organize? Are there any concerns regarding the preparation that coaches can address? So all of these things are listed all on here. If you're weight cutting, do you need any help or advice? Are we staying hydrated, or are we just trying to dehydrate ourselves? Because that's not going to improve our performance, right? Do you have enough strength and conditioning program leading into these, right? That accounts for the periodization and the workload from all the training camps. And do you need one provided if you don't have one? Do you require access to any facilities while in camp or in Africa that are necessary for your preparation? Is there something specific that you need where you need a specific apparatus or a specific type of facility to help you prepare? And do you need any further help with anything related to any of the trials? And then at the same point in time, we also want feedback. Is there feedback for the coaches or officials following the Oceania championships that would help either yourself or the team in general, you feel? And so all of the athletes had these, coaches had access to these as well. I know that these calls are for multiple levels from the youth development all the way through. I think it's an important piece that the youth development sees these, has access to these. These are definitely things that we use, that I've used with my 6-year-olds all the way up, obviously not as in depth. But we do have these general conversations. What are they hearing in the corner as an athlete? What do you hear when I'm coaching you? Can you hear me? Is there only time during a break? What is that cue? Obviously, when we get into weight cutting and those things, when you're talking about youth and development, shouldn't be much, if any, weight management whatsoever at that point, especially with the younger ones. So like some of those conversations are a little bit different. Instead of asking if you're weight cutting, do you need any help or advice? Maybe that's a conversation with the 6-year-old is, hey, did you get in all your water today? How many cups of water have you had today? And those are more those conversations with the younger development athletes. And then as they progress through the system, they should continue to develop to where then it becomes a weight management system. So, but as far as our senior team that's getting ready to go compete for the qualifier, they should be able to answer every one of these questions, have good thoughts, have good feedback, have that communication going with the coaches. So that way we can better prepare. And I know many have had these already. This is another look inside that folder. You can see the athlete folder or the athlete feedback. That's the bottom left on this picture here on this slide. This particular folder is Jaden's, and so you look at Jaden's stat breakdown on the bottom right. I didn't blow it up. I just showed just a little. I know it's going to be blurry, but it's got every statistic in there of his matches from the Oceanas. At the same point in time, you got coach's feedback in the middle. That was our general feedback coming off of the Oceania championships. So that way he had that. You'll see the top folder in the middle that just says videos. Those are the videos of Jaden's matches at the championships. So he can evaluate himself. He can go to the coach's feedback right off of those. That was our general feedback going off of his matches. And then when you look at to the left, you see the African trial opponent analysis. These are potential lineups, potential matchups that we could see. It's film. There's film. And then we've also have a coach's feedback for each one of those athletes inside there. So for instance, this is a prime example of this. That folder, if you look at the bottom, that Google Doc has the potential opponents where the names in the country. You see each folder has each individual opponent. When you click on that, you will see, say you click on Ivan's, you would see obviously his matches. You would also see our evaluations and what we thought and how we evaluated him and broke him down. And so this is a prime example of that. You see all of the matches inside the folder. And so then that way you can do a video analysis, a true video analysis of it. And then as you get going, and these were shared with them. So we've got the African trial athletes, and then we've got the non-trial athletes. So these folders are out there, accessible, and they've been being used. The breakdown stats with all the different colors that you see, that is all of them. That is everybody, the trial athletes and the non-trial athletes. That's all of the statistics from the oceanics. So this folder is obviously out there. It's being utilized daily. I know Connor and I have talked extensively about it quite a bit. We've got in several different things to break down, and one of the things that we look at in the statistics are where are we getting, where's our strengths, going back to that, so we can build off that confidence piece for that. So any questions or thoughts with this? Have you guys seen these? Have you guys utilized these with this particular group?
It's Bud here, Coach. Look, all I can say is from my point of view here is that it's such a pleasure to see the professionalism which is being exhibited here. To me, it's astounding. I've come from a different background, and I haven't been at this level. And for me personally, the level is just too high. Like I'm not going to be using this. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm not going to be using it to its full extent, put it that way.
Sure.
But the work that you're putting in and the information that's out there for us to use is just astounding.
Good. And so to give you an idea, because that's a great point. When we're talking development and we're talking, even when we talk these courses, 201, 202, 203, there's definitely different levels, and there's a staggered system to it, right? And it's building. And so what I would do with this for youth level juniors, your U15, U17, they can start utilizing this. Now, will the folder have all of these details in there? Absolutely not. Maybe for the U15, you would just put in there, just the Google sheet of, hey, what's your evaluation? We just had this tournament. What's your evaluation? What did you get to? What was working for you? What was not working for you? Where do you think your weakness is that we need to make a strength? Right. So if you thought going in you were going to hit double legs and all of a sudden you weren't getting a double leg, well, maybe we need to look at a single leg and work on that. Or maybe it's the setup to the double leg. What is happening? What is stopping us there? And let's work on that. That would be somewhere with the U15, right? Is start evaluating themselves, because we got to look internally first, right? And then start having that communication and that conversation with the coach and the athlete, and that's going to build that relationship. And then when something starts working, then all of a sudden that builds a little more trust in that, gets a little more confidence. Then we go from there. The other thing that I would add in there with that U15 athlete is that, I would also show them video of themselves. So have them fill out that form first, and then watch the film and look at what they wrote down. Does that align? Does that match up? Because a lot of times what we see or what we feel in the middle of a match, we go back and watch and it's not there. I can't tell you how many times I've had this conversation with a U15, a U17, or a U20 athlete where they're like, man, I really thought that shot was there. And man, that space, I was way too far away. No wonder he was able to sprawl down block, go behind. Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
shot
yeah.
too far away, right? And so those are things that I would start this progression with, where you can utilize these folders or this setup, or something similar that works for you and your system, right? Like each gym is going to be different. If it's a jujitsu gym or if it's a rugby club that's using wrestling to come in, like that's another piece of this. Like now they can also use this film breakdown and these film reviews for their rugby club as well, right? And so these are pieces with this that, yes, this is wrestling. Yes, this is Olympic game qualifying tournament. This is what we are using for them right now. But at the same time, we can use this at multiple levels. So I don't know. Does that help a little bit?
Of course it does. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So I wanted to make sure that everybody at every level got to at least kind of see and got a sneak peek of if they weren't utilizing it already, make sure that they saw kind of what we're doing. So now let's get into Mega Week. And this is coming up in June. And so the first question that I have, and obviously I'm going to kind of leave this open for more discussion from you guys as well, is what are three things that you're expecting? We'll just start with the first question that you're expecting Mega Week. What's it look like? What when you hear Mega Week Wrestling Australia, Wrestling Australia's Mega Week, Combat Australia's Mega Week of Wrestling. What do you guys think? What does that look like to you guys?
Um, I'm not familiar with it, to tell you the truth. I'm sorry. I've missed the last couple of sessions.
Yeah. So
Um,
what does a Mega Week of Wrestling look like to you? What comes in your head? There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious.
well, if I saw that coming up there on one of my emails put out by Wrestling Australia, I'm going to be sitting there saying, all right, let's get some action going. But am I going to be able to get there? Am I going to be able to get my athletes to there? Because we're in regional Victoria. We're not Melbourne. We're not Sydney.
Right.
And that's going to be my first part. How am I going to get there? And how am I going to facilitate 3 weeks of it? Not just one day, but 3 weeks of it. My athletes are married. They have lives. They have full-time jobs. What am I going to do with 3 weeks?
Sure. Sure. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great stuff. What's anybody else? Thoughts? Chime in.
So I saw it's just of the coaches and athletes and make a big camp and sharing experience and yeah, educate each other like yeah.
Sure. Sure. Anything else? Michael, what do you think? What do you think when you hear Mega
Yeah,
Week?
look, I just got the video off because I'm out in the sun doing the Kyle Dake protocol.
Perfect.
I've got the from an athlete's perspective, I'm thinking Mega Week. And look, I've got no idea what this is supposed to be, but Mega sounds like it's a whole wrestling week, big camp, getting in some people from different countries, bringing them in, almost like a little festival for wrestling. Like we train, um, matches, and then potentially also theory stuff. But I think other people just don't really like the theory side of things as the way that I do. So just a whole lot of wrestling, a whole lot of training, and
Okay.
just a whole lot of improvement.
Yeah. Okay, good. So, and so then that brings us to the next question. As you were going, right? What are three things that you're wanting to get from Mega Week? So we've heard like to facilitate or how to get there and some of the worries and some of the concerns and some of the thoughts that initially go with it. And without knowing, quote unquote, knowing what a Mega Week of Wrestling Australia looks like at this point, what are things that you are wanting? Like if you know, hey, you hear Mega Week and you're like, yep, I'm in, I'm going to Mega Week. What are you wanting to get from? Like I hear like from Michael, I'm guessing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but coming off of it, like you want to make sure that there's matches going on and that you're improving technically on the mat as well. You would also like some theory, but you don't know how much other people would want that. But what are you overall, if you walk away from Mega Week, what do you want to have gotten out of it?
Um, I don't know. It's more time on the mats, more kind of like working in a wrestling sense of networking with other wrestlers from Australia, potentially elsewhere, um, and having you there at that last camp, that was awesome. So if it's more things like that, because you just come in with a different perspective, like you might say the same things, or the what you're getting across is the same, but you say it in a different way. That makes it, wow, I've never heard of that before. But really, we hear it all the time. Like you're just telling us to change levels, but you said it in a different way that made it sound so profound, kind of thing. So just bringing that different perspective in that you get from like outsiders, shall I say,
Sure. Yeah.
or people with a different perspective on wrestling who've had maybe more experience with high level guys or what. Um, yeah, that's what I would
Awesome.
want to get from it. Just more mega sounded. It's above just a normal training camp, right? It can't just be a regular training. Yeah, a mega thing. So
Sure.
yeah,
So bigger, more expertise coming in, different avenues, just bigger. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, maybe even some extra like training partners. If you brought a bunch of people over from your club or something, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you? Can I throw a question back to you?
Yeah. No, that's exactly what we're doing here. Yes.
Okay, so has Mega Week? What is it?
So I'm gonna kind of go into that next slide. I'm gonna go into
Okay.
kind of where we're at, but this is a piece of this because we're building this, and we won't know until after the qualifier, after this next week, exactly the outline and the schedule and all of the intricate details because we're still working on some of those, and it makes a big difference. Do we qualify 18 spots? Do we qualify every spot? Do we qualify 2 spots? Do we qualify 1 spot? Like all of that changes, right?
Yeah.
With Mega Week and the concentration. So that could change a little bit. And so I'm going to give kind of a brief outline or a brief summary of what we are envisioning and what we've talked about. And then we can give in more details on April 5th call. We can give in, then we can get in more details, if that makes sense. But any other thoughts? And so a piece of this, to answer, kind of get back to it, a piece of this is we also want input. What are people looking for to get from Mega Week, right? We have our idea of, from the admin side and from the administration side and from the development side, and from, different projects and different things. We have that from the coaches side and from the national team and from the governing bodies with Combat Australia and with Wrestling Australia and what they are wanting. So we've got certain requirements, not really requirements, but certain expectations that we want to meet. And then at the same point in time, we want to add in as much as we can to make sure that you guys are getting, so it's a win-win for everybody that's involved, right? All the proprietors, all the stakeholders, all the wrestlers, all the coaches, and we're growing wrestling in Australia. That's the bottom line, is that we're growing wrestling in Australia. So, but what are some other things that you guys are looking for? Are you wanting to get?
Coach, if I could just support Michael on one point there that he said, just having some of these skills gone over again that we go over 100 times, but coming from someone else, an outside coach, which has got a reputation, they're going to listen to it a little bit more.
Sure.
And it means a little bit more. I mean, they've got it in the back of their mind, but they may not be using it to what they can be. Hearing it from someone else say, Jesus, my coach taught me that. Why didn't I remember it? It just refreshes in their mind and solidifies it in their mind that some of these moves can be done and should be done and how they should be done. The other thing that we would need to, on a Mega Week, I would like to see competition. We're just lacking in Victoria. We're just lacking competition.
Sure.
I don't know what my guys are working for. I really don't know. I've got to hold them in such high praise because they work their guts out week in, week out, and there's no goal at the end. There's nothing for them to shoot for. I mean, we can't get to the Oceanias. We can't achieve that. But there's nothing for them to even work for. There's no competitions here in Victoria.
Sure.
Our next one is in April. That's not too far away. Our last one was, I think, in November, April. So you got that time. Now in April, we're going to have to travel 5 hours to get there for a 9 o'clock weigh-in. Now, how am I going to do that?
Right. Yeah. And that's tough when you don't have a test, right? When you're practicing and you're working towards something like you said, and that's exactly what the competition is in reality, right? Competition is you're testing out what you've been working on. Is it working, and where are you at? Where's your skill level in that? And
that's
so
the only thing we're working for. That's the only thing I'm coaching for, is because I like competition. I can't do it, but I can watch my coaches. Watch my students do it.
Sure. The Yeah, I think, and I'm taking notes. So I'm just taking notes on a lot of this stuff because this is very, very good stuff. Um, yeah, so definitely like these things are and they're in this, right? So anything else on things that you are wanting or things that you're expecting, right? That kind of goes into the third thing is, or the third question is what is something that you're expecting to participate in? Obviously, competition would be one of those. I mean, both of you guys have said that today. Like, yes, you're wanting to see competition, you're wanting to see that. You're wanting to hear different perspectives. You're wanting to hear high level coaches come in and give some expertise and maybe things in a different avenue or a different way. Maybe it's a move coming from a way that you haven't seen it. I showed reverse seatbelt whenever we were down there last time, and getting ready. If you're watching some of these competitions, when you watch the Pan Am Championships, when you watched, we saw it in the African or the Oceanic Championships. These reverse seatbelt positions off of these sprawls and some of these the way that people are scoring, it's there, it's prevalent. Front head position and different moves, quote unquote moves to look for through those positions, right? Different people have different views and different ways of doing things, and so more perspective, right? It just changes a perspective, maybe, and the way that things are viewed. Same move, same thing, but different perspective. So is there anything else that you kind of expect, or you're like, hey, I this kind of would really excite me to be here?
Um, yeah, I would like to call the referees like to get participated in the mega week to give more experience about the rules of wrestling. So, so the athletes or the wrestler will be aware enough about the rules and how to get the points and how win the match.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's something that's not talked about a lot, right? Is the scoring and the officiating and match strategy and mat awareness.
Yeah.
Um, and these things are when we go back to that folder, that Google Drive folder. I know with my U17 team and my U20 team, that is a piece that I add in the middle of that we didn't add in this one. But is what is our strategy when you're up by one and you're put in the zone, right? Your opponent's pushing you into the zone and you're up by one. What are your options? What's your game plan at that point? If he's got a collar tie, or if he's got a 2-on-1, or if he's got an underhook, and you're up by one and you're in the zone, what's your options? Or vice versa. If you're winning by one and you're putting them in a zone, so there's a lot of match strategy as well, and so we talk about that quite a bit with my U17 and U20 guys. We're getting ready, or at least that level, our development level here in our club. We're our next test or our next competition. We just got done with one a couple of weeks ago, and so our next one will be at the beginning or in April. We'll go out to the Olympic trial, or not the Olympic, but the World Team Trials out there. So there are many levels to that, but yes, definitely the reffing, the scoring, the change of rules. So let me go ahead and get into this next slide. So this is kind of the organization and planning of Mega Week, and this is kind of where we're at. So it is simple as the 6 questions at top. And we've talked about these in previous videos that are all, like I said, on Wrestling Australia's website, but who, what, where, when, why, and how. So, and we're going to kind of work down this. We have to focus the end product. What do we want to get at the end? And then we got to work backwards. We know 100% that we will have the Coaching 201 course there. Okay. So we know that there will be some coaches education in that. I can tell you in the 201 course, as well as the 202 course, there is some reffing. There is some rules questions, rule module where you're learning about the rules and the modifications within them, both in the 201 and the 202 course. We are going to be given the 201 course as part of the Mega Week, because this Mega Week is not just for the athletes, but it's for officials. It's for all stakeholders involved, obviously coaches, right? Coaches and athletes. So there will be something going throughout this entire mega thing. So Mega Week. So as far as the end product for the specific athletes, as I said earlier, it really depends on the results from the Olympic qualifier. Then we can work backwards from there. because what does the senior level need? What does the U15? What does the U20? What does all of the developmental levels need? And we can work backwards from there and reassess. And then we can give them what we think that they need, as well as I've taken notes on what you guys have said. And obviously we will meet again. We got several more meetings to line this thing out. Safety. This is going to be a big piece of this mega week. And coach, you were talking about it, just getting the athletes to and from the facilities, getting the athletes there in a safe manner. Like you said, if a flight, if you're trying to weigh in at 9 o'clock and you've got a 4.5 hour drive, is that really safe to be driving on the road or to be traveling through that time of night with the animals and everything else that's out and about? Who knows, in a vehicle, what vehicles? You cannot have high performance without safety. The other thing that we're working on right now is the emergency action plan, or the EAP. What is the emergency action plan? We got to have one of those. If you're traveling, you got to have one of those if you're there. If an emergency happens, where's the AED? Who's going to be the trainer or the physio that's in place right there? Who's going to be taking care of those things? Age or level, the coaches' certificates, the U17 to senior athletes. Obviously, right now, this is the development level all the way through senior athletes are planning on being a piece of this mega week. Coaches and their certifications, no matter what level they are at, this is going to be a piece of this mega week. That also comes into the financial aspect, right? And the cost, because as coach said, if you're taking off work to get there, that's a little cost sensitive. So we are mindful of that. You'll see we get down a little bit lower. We talk about the cost. But the coach's course, obviously anytime we can be in person and do a coach's education course, that's going to be way more beneficial than probably reading it and doing it online. At the same point in time, it's the same thing for the athletes, no matter what age or level. If you're there in person and if you have a wide variety of people pouring in from different angles and different perspectives, then the better that it can become, right? Location and travel. We do know that it's in Melbourne at this point. I've been told that it's in Melbourne. I have not been to the site, so I'm going to be relying on Andre and some of those guys to kind of hash out those details. I know Kyle always does a phenomenal job with making sure all of the rooms and the travel and the location site is taken care of. So I know that he and Andre and Andrew and everybody involved is working on those things to make sure that it's a smooth transition and everything is very accessible and easy to get in and out of and to, with minimal stress or anxiety that goes with that. But there will be some, as coach said, just traveling to get there, what days to get there, what times to get there, when do these things start, the schedule. But once we are there, I do know that the hope is once we are there, we are there. We're not going to be traveling, so to say, a ton. Everything should be, pretty much remotely there. Coaches and roles. This is a piece of this in the planning. We know that there's a camp alongside the coaching clinic. We know that there's going to be a coaching clinic. We know that there's going to be a camp. We know that there's going to be some competitions. We know all of those things are there. Obviously now these are things that we got to look at the coaches, and we've got to have different roles filled. We got to figure out who's supervising the athletes, who's supervising the facilities, who's supervising every little detail, the travel, the meals, who is leading each session. What are those sessions going to be on? Are they going to, who's going to be leading the coaches clinic? Who's going to be, the 201 coaches clinic? Who's going to be leading the practice sessions? Who's going to be leading the referees in their sessions? Obviously, at the same point in time, we're still working on that 1-to-4 ratio, where we talk for a minute and we let the athletes compete and drill and practice for 4. When I was down there last time, we definitely used a 1-to-4. That's where I used my timer. That was new to a lot of the athletes and coaches. They hadn't seen that before, I don't think. But I did that so that way it kept me to a 1-to-4 ratio where they didn't have to hear me talk a whole lot. They were just getting in and moving and working through it. And then after the session, we could dissect a little bit more if need be. But that way, if somebody picked up something right away, they didn't have to wait and kind of stall. They could get in more repetitions. The 4-to-1 ratio is more the positive. positive to correction ratio. And then we're going to be going over the EDIP model when I'm down there next time. And during this mega week, we will go over the EDIP. And the EDIP is explain, demonstrate, imitate, and then practice. And so we did some of that when I was down there last time, but we're going to dive into that quite a bit more. And I'm going to dive into that with coaches. I'm going to be doing that with some of the coaches so that way they can see that even when they're supervising or when they're leading sessions, this EDIP model can be used universal all the way across all platforms. And so just kind of explaining what we're doing, and then we obviously we demonstrate it and then have them imitate it and then practice it. Basically the objectives, right? And the whole planning, if we're working from the backward, from the end back to the front, the objective is to further develop our coaches and athletes for world and Olympic competition. That's the goal, right? And this mega week throughout it, obviously, depending on how many Olympic qualifiers we have, is going to support them and help encourage them and build their confidence and do those things while we are further developing the coaches and the athletes underneath them to push them for higher success. The cost, as I said, we won't know really the general cost of all of this until we get through this next week. So there's still kind of that out in limbo, so to say, because we don't know the extent of it and what all it's going to take and what resources we're going to want and need to bring in. Basically, I asked you guys your expectations from us and from the mega week and what that looks like and what you're expecting it and what you are wanting. I can tell you on behalf of myself, the one thing that you can see in bright red right there, the one thing that I'm looking for and my expectations from athletes and coaches during this mega week is that they are available. Just be available. That means if you are, I tell my athletes here, this is the only rule that we have in our club is to be available. And that means their skin is clean and taken care of. Their fingernails are clipped, all the little details, right? They're at weight. They're on time. They are taking care of their body and they're able to practice every session. If they're a coach, that means they're available. That means that they're dressed out. They're on the mat with us. They're not late. They're dressed, ready to go, ready. They're available to demonstrate. They know what the practice schedule looks like. They know the material that we're going to cover. If it's a coach's course, that means they're available. That means they're in their chair. They're ready to go. They've got their notebook. They've got their phone for cameras or whatever they need. All of those things, they are available in every way. Same thing as referees. We got to make sure that the referees are available, not just to officiate, but the officials are there to help us educate as well. They can educate us, and hopefully we can help educate them on things that we're seeing or things that we're feeling. I know when I was down there last time, the way things were called were completely different than the World Championships just a few months earlier. And so, those are things that we can have discussions, even as far as down to nutrition. When I was down there last time, I was talking to the officials and I'm like, hey, in a normal tournament day, what are you eating? What's the amount of water that you're putting in? Because the highlight match is usually of the evening when it's the finals. And that's when you've got to be your best. And if you're not properly fueled, you're not going to be ready to officiate that championship match or that placement match at the highest caliber. And so we had really, really great discussion, and I'm looking forward to continuing that with them. And the last thing here is daily schedule. The days, times, and sessions, we won't have that dialed in yet. Those are things that we will work on when we come out of this. But I do know, I would really like to have just kind of like we did last time when I was down there, where we can have some mental sessions in between the physical sessions. So then that way they can mentally and physically recover in the middle of that. But at the same point in time, we can still be working on goals and those things. And that's with the coaches and the athletes. We had coaches meetings when I was down there last time as well. But this time, obviously, we're going to add in some coaches courses in the middle. And so then that way we can start getting them to go back to that EDIP model. I can explain something, a theory. We can demonstrate it a little bit and say maybe the first practice and kind of imitate some things through it. And then they can actually practice it. The coaches can dive in and practice that in maybe an afternoon session or an evening session with the athletes. So then they can put it right into practice right away. And then we can come back the next day and we can re-meet and talk about the things that they liked, they didn't like, those things, and how are we growing and what do we need to do to continue to grow that process. So that's kind of the organization and planning of it right now. There's many more things that go into it, but this is kind of a brief, rough draft of working from the end back to give you a little bit of an idea of how we are viewing it at this point in time. And basically the expectations from the athletes and coaches is at this time is just to be available and know that you're getting ready to learn, mentally, physically. You're going to have competitions. You're going to have training sessions. You're going to have clinics. You're going to have a wide variety of things into this mega week at many different levels. We just don't have the cost or the daily schedule or necessarily the coaches' roles kind of laid out yet. And those are things that we're working on. But we are looking at even. Yes, go ahead.
Coach, can I just interrupt? Sorry.
Yeah, no.
When is this kind of programmed for, scheduled for?
So we're looking in June when the national tournament is. So we're going to build it around that because a lot of people obviously are going to be traveling in for that. And so that's when we are building this around.
All right, because if we're going to participate at all, then we're going to have to start looking at sponsorship. We're going to have to look at funding.
Sure.
And without time, I can't do that.
Sure. And so this is June. That gives you the timeline is we are looking in June. And so and we're building it right around, the tournament, and the tournament's going to be held in Melbourne. So that's why we're trying, everything to gear that around there. And we, like I said, within this next week, I know I've got several meetings with Andre and Connor and Andrew and several different people. Kyle is going to be in these as well, and several different meetings coming up of just getting this out so we can get it out to people as soon as possible. But yes, I would start looking at, sponsorships or things there. And I don't know, this is one of those things that I don't know. Are you the only club around you, or do you have several clubs that are around you?
No, we're single.
Yeah. And so usually what do you do to get funding to go somewhere?
Well, we've been funding ourselves so far. Our club, they have a fighting fund, but I haven't tried to get use of it yet because I don't know. There's other athletes there that maybe need it more than us. There is some funds available from the center, but what that is, I don't know. But I prefer to do it on our own if we can.
Sure. And there's several different ways I know of funding. If you want to shoot me an email or shoot me something, we can have kind of a side conversation of that. And maybe I can give you some ideas or some thoughts. And I don't know if they'll work or not for you because but I can maybe learn more about your area and kind of your situation, and then maybe help you with that. Because I know, like for us, I'm taking 15 athletes over to Europe this summer that are 15 to 17 years old. Actually, when I leave Australia, I'm not coming back to America. I'm going from Australia straight up to Zagreb, Croatia, and I'm going to meet them there. But I had to work through some of these problems because they got, 3,500 that they got to come up with. That's a lot of money, right? For a 15-year-old, 16-year-old. And so, so we've came up with a wide variety of ways of different things where they're trying to fundraise the money and make it happen. And they've done a great job with it. But without knowing your specific situation, the more we can have that conversation, maybe I can give you some ideas through them and through what we've been doing there that'll maybe help this, because cost is a factor of it, right? Like cost, whether that cost is time, whether it's time away from a job, whether it's time, there's so many things that cost, right? So other than just the dollar, obviously the dollar amount is cost as well, but yeah. Any other thoughts on this? Yeah, no, that's great stuff, Coach. This is what I want. I want to interact. This is great.
Just not at the moment. Not for me anyway.
Sure. Okay. And that is quick as that is, there's pretty much our time. I just want to know, what can I do to help you guys? The next call is April 5th. We will obviously have that on that call. We will have the Olympic qualifier review. and then we can also hopefully be able to produce all the mega week plans, what that looks like, give the exact dates, give the exact times, a more formalized schedule, planning of events there. That is the goal. That is the plan at this point. And so, that is our plan. That's our goal. So then on April 5th, we should be able to help out quite a bit. And especially Coach, if we can, get together, maybe we can help you a little bit more in some other ways. But, on the athlete and coaches side, we'll know how many qualified spots we have. We'll know that we can go from there, and exactly what this week's going to be shaped into a little bit more. So, and by then we should have a little bit better cost where we're going to be. We can know the EAP a little bit better. We can know the travel plans, the meal plans, all of those things can be, hopefully a lot of those things can be worked out between now and then. So I know it's a short window, but at the same time, we've got a lot of it groundwork laid. We just need to know some final things.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else that I can do for any of you guys before we get off here for this call? I appreciate you guys being on more than you know. I appreciate the feedback. I got several notes of things that we need to make sure to include. Anything else?
All good for me.
Okay. Well, I will see you soon.
See you
A couple of you
Wednesday.
anyways. Yeah. So I will see you guys soon.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.